السلام عليكم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Respected brothers and sisters, today is a topic that resembles a little bit a topic we have had a few weeks ago, but inshallah, as Allah says, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and remind, for verily remind, that benefits the true believers. Today is the topic of looking after and bringing up the youth. But I will talk inshallah about some of the issues that maybe didn't get mentioned as much in the khutbah 2 or 3 weeks ago. And for those of you who may be new to Manar khutbas, I want to mention that looking after the youth is the responsibility of the parents first of all. And I want to remind that we, when we get married, we assume certain responsibilities, both the wife and the husband. And those responsibilities are found clearly in the Quran and Sunnah. Allah said, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, O you who have believed, Qu anfusakum, save yourselves, or protect yourselves because of wiqaya, waqayati. Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, protect yourselves and your families from the fire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ, the fuel of which is people and stones. Also the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ, all of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock, meaning all of us have responsibilities. And one of the things, as an example he gave in this hadith, is الرَّجُلْ رَاعٍ فِي أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ, that the man is a shepherd in relation to the people of his house, his household. And also he said, وَالْمَرْأَةُ, and the woman, رَاعِيَةٌ فِي بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا, that she is the lady who is married, she is responsible for the household of her husband. So this is something that has been mentioned many times, and we must try, and if we are not even married, we must try and prepare ourselves mentally to getting married. And those of us who have become married, we must assume that responsibility and ask Allah to help us to fulfill it correctly. As for the youth, then they also have responsibilities. One of the responsibilities they have is to obey their parents as long as they do not tell them to do something that is haram. Something that is haram. That means that even the youth must try and have some level of basic, at least, Islamic education, so we don't get situations where we have blind, totally following, where people obey their parents even when they tell them to do things that are not allowed in the religion. So it's very important for us to do that. And that is something I don't think we disagree about as Muslims, and therefore we go to the next stage, and that is the main factors that shape the education and the upbringing of the youth and the children. And we all go through the stages of life where we go through the stage of being a young person. And that period is extremely important, as you understand and know and have felt, because many things that will influence your future life happen in that period. In fact, probably that period is more important for the rest of your life than any other period. So it's extremely important for us as parents and people who may be relatives to understand this when we deal with the youth. And if we are the youth, and some of our brothers here are, mashallah, already at a high level, and some of them are even at university and college, I want also to talk to you directly and say, if you are from the youth, you must also understand the importance of this period of your life. And you are not obliged to take everything people tell you to do and to say. You are a human being, you are a slave to Allah, you're not slave to anyone else, and you must listen to what He says first and foremost, and what His Prophet ﷺ says, and based upon that, take your decisions for the future, which will influence the whole of your life from now on. And you will find that any person who has achieved something or who has not achieved something, during the youth you will find something in that person's life. Either that they took advantage of something, or that they didn't take advantage of something. So that is why for all of us, whether we are parents or members of society or youth, we must understand the importance of this period. That is extremely important for us to give good advice, because not everyone who talks, all people can talk. And most people who are not disabled, they talk, as you know. And they think, most of us, we think we have the best advice. But that's not the case. And most people want our advice to be taken. But we can be wrong, because our advice is based on our opinions. So we should be a little bit humble, and I start from myself, when we give advice or opinion, that this opinion can be wrong. So what are the factors that influence a young person, and even an older person, but especially a young person, during his or her life? First of all, there is no doubt that the religious upbringing, or the religion that they follow, or the lack thereof. They may not have any religion, but we are talking now about Muslim youth. So we want to concentrate on the Muslim youth. The Muslim youth, they're generally affected by their religious background. So if they have had good religious background in the family and in other places, they will find themselves confident people. They will be able to make decisions. They will be able to be responsible for the future life. And that is extremely important. That is why it's extremely important for everyone who is in the family, including grandparents, uncles, aunts, and anyone else connected to the youth, to understand that they must develop the individual whom Allah is pleased with. Not I am pleased with, or my uncle is pleased with, or my father is pleased with, but Allah is pleased with. So that means, as the scholars teach us, we must ask, if we don't know ourselves, ask knowledgeable people, what is the young person that Allah is pleased with? And we find in the Quran, Allah praised certain young people. For example, Surah Al-Kahf, most Muslims read on a Friday. And in Surah Al-Kahf, we have the story of the youth, or the fitya, young men, young people, who abandoned their own people because they were not worshipping Allah. Young people, fitya, Allah mentioned them. Fitya in Arabic means young people. We have also in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was young as well as when he got old. Because those people who came and they found the idols broken, they said, who has done this with our idols, with our gods? And some of them said, we heard a young man, سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. We heard a young man criticizing them. So that young man, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was not afraid to criticize the gods that they were worshipping. And he was brave. And of course we have the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam, among them Ismail alayhi salam, who said, when Ibrahim said, Allah showed me a dream in which I am sacrificing you. And he said, افعل ما تؤمر. What kind of tarbiyah must he have had, Ismail, for him to say, do what you have been told. You will find me from the patient. And he was only a young man. He didn't panic at all, subhanAllah. We also have many examples of prophets who were young, as Ibrahim and others. And Allah said about Yahya, وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ صَبِيًّا, that we have given Yahya the rule or ruling and the ability to see between right and wrong and wisdom when he was young, when he was very young. And previously it has been mentioned how the Prophet ﷺ used to educate the young Sahaba, the companions. Like Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, because Ibn Umar was shown to him at the Battle of Badr when he was 14 years of age. And he wanted to fight. Ibn Umar wanted to fight. Or Uhud, I think, if I'm not mistaken, not Badr. Or Badr. In any case, at one of the battles from Uhud or Badr, he was shown and the Prophet didn't approve. He said, you're 14, you're too young. The next year, he said, you're 15, you can fight. But fight for what? Because nowadays people go and fight for people, and I mentioned in the khutbahs, and I think khatibs and imams, they have a responsibility. Even if they may be afraid of something, they must be afraid of Allah more than that something. So we, for example, when we talk about Islamic State and those people who misguide Muslims and the youth, and we must analyze, we must have the ability to analyze. We must teach our children the ability to analyze. Not to accept everything people say, even not to accept what I say as a father. Check what I say. Is what I'm saying correct or not? If it is correct, follow it. If it isn't correct, don't follow it. So we have to teach ourselves and our children that. Analyze, like I told you before, Islamic State, state without any state. No ministry, no one, no someone claiming to be a ruler, and so on. And saying Islamic, and it's been mentioned in the khutbahs, that Islam doesn't even allow to scare a sheep when you slaughter it. Scare a sheep. Don't sharpen the knife in front of the sheep. Don't slaughter another sheep in front of the sheep. And these guys are slaughtering people like sheep and showing other people. It's not Islamic. Everyone knows that, alhamdulillah. And those who don't, they should be explained, should be relayed to them. And the youth must have that, and this is what we must not fear. Because sometimes, nowadays, we have this atmosphere, maybe from fear, atmosphere, that if we say anything to people, their parents will be upset. Their parents will be upset. But if someone says to my child to be correct, why should I be upset? If someone taught my child how to drive for free, I would say, Allahu Akbar. This is great. You saved me so much money. You taught my child to drive. Jazakallah khair. How can you invite you for 300 biryanis? That might be a bit expensive, but maybe for 2. So, but when someone directs them to deen, we sometimes get upset. We shouldn't. We should have an atmosphere among ourselves that my child can be taught by my brother and neighbor and others, maybe praying in the masjid. Especially if he's an imam, or khatib, or sheikh, or teacher, or someone like that. And he knows the religion of Islam. So the deen is number 1 priority. And we must teach ourselves and our children that it's more important than dunya. Nowadays we say that, but in our life we show them that we actually don't practice it. In our life, when it comes to everything, we show our children that what we say we don't practice. So we force them, like some brothers here sitting, they complain to me that their parents force them to study at a university which is mixed with girls. And of course, most parents, if you say, they say, what's wrong with that? They don't even know anything wrong with that. And why then don't we mix in this place with ladies and sit and listen to the khutbah? Why did Allah not allow a lady to give khutbah? Because some people we have in the Islamic world who say there is no proof in Islam that segregation should be practiced. There is no proof, so a woman can pray, no problem. Imam. Woman can do adhan. Woman can be teacher of Quran for young men and beautify her voice. And what is this? They don't even think. Or they follow ahwa, desires, because they want dunya. The Prophet ﷺ said to Ibn Umar, لو تركنا هذا الباب للنساء. I wish we left this door of the masjid for the women. And they say Ibn Umar never entered that door until he died. No proof. Allah said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't go near zina. Near zina. The Prophet ﷺ said in Hadith Bukhari Muslim, the zina of the eye is to look. How much does a young man who wants to get married look at girls sitting next to him? And this brother said, they sit to me. I go away, they come and sit with me. And then he said, drink alcohol openly, and they smoke. What do you want from your child? You say deen, and you push your child to study like that? I studied at 2 universities. Yes, I didn't finish them, but I've seen the campus life. You want to show the campus life? Go see. You will hardly find any worse life than the campus life. Read. You don't believe me? Read. Go see. So your responsibility as a parent is not to force your child to obtain a degree at all costs, because that shows that for you the dunya is more important than the deen. Because the deen says, make sure your child obtains that degree in a lawful, halal way. And there are many ways to do it. In the West, even you have the Open University. Someone says, I can't become a doctor at the Open University, because I talked to some brothers. Yeah, try to find where you can study halal, not just run after the big dollar. Halal. That's what we need to understand as Muslims and practice and show our children. Halal. And the Prophet ﷺ says, touching is zina of the hand. Walking is zina of the leg. Speaking is zina of the tongue. So the private parts, he said, confirm it or deny it. So in this place where is the masjid, where we talk about Allah, we don't mix with ladies. Why? Because it's not from Islam. And in a place where they talk about everything but Allah. Everything. And they talk about everything bad and haram and everything they practice is good to mix. And we must fear Allah, brothers and sisters, in front of Allah. Yes, if our children don't listen to us, that's a second issue. They're responsible in front of Allah. But we as parents, we can't push them into the nightclub and say, don't commit haram. Because campus life is like a nightclub, just no music. We must fear Allah. So the environment is very important. That's the second point after the religion. The environment. As well as the religious authority they have. We must choose carefully their religious authority. Is it a person following the Sunnah, understanding the Sunnah, or a person who follows his desires? That requires us to check, to compare, to ask. Also, we must carefully choose our friends and their friends. Because our friends will have influence over them. And their friends will also have influence over them. And in this life, in this time, in this period of time, we must carefully try as much as we can, monitor what they watch, if we can. Because nowadays it's all personal. All the phones are personal. Very hard to monitor. But we should get them used that it is not because we're trying to interrupt their personal and social life, but it's because it's our responsibility. It's like the police. The police have authority to stop you if you're speeding. If they have suspicion that you are speeding, they can stop you based on suspicion. So we can also go into our children's room or check their phone if we have a suspicion. Or just a routine check. Police can go around and check. We are supposed to be that police. Why? Because every person in the world, whether they're Muslims or not, have certain red lines that they make themselves or someone makes for them. So we as Muslims, we must know those red lines and we must practice it with our children. And may Allah enable us to do that. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي. Respected brothers and sisters, certain other factors are important as well. As has been mentioned many times, it's very important for us to try and make a culture of reading at home. To have some small library, even 3 books, 4 books, 2 books, in any language they understand. Whether it's better, of course, Arabic, but if we can't read or write, then in English or any other language that they understand, not only religious, give them love of books. Because inshallah, this love will lead them to good things. Because we get reminded by many good brothers, we spend so much money on electronic devices. But sometimes we need to spend a fraction of that, very little, to get a book. And we may not want to do it. And Shaitan is telling us, as Allah said, يَعِدُكُمُ الْفَقْرَ. He's telling you that you will be poor. He's promising you poverty. So don't listen to him. How many of us have become poor because we bought a book? Alhamdulillah, no one, I don't think. How many of us became poor because we bought a notebook, a pen or something? None of us. 1 dirham they sell very good pens. And we soon, some of us unfortunately will not write much because we say that we photograph and it's nothing, it's no replacement for writing. And Allah mentioned the qalam, the pen in the Quran. And He mentioned reading and reciting in the Quran. And there is no use of the pen if there is no paper, brothers and sisters. So we must get accustomed to pens and paper. We must have a notebook with us and teach our children and the youth to have it. And we must teach them to have the best examples in the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Not in football players, not in cricket players, not in actors. not in singers, a'udhu billah, who drink today and tomorrow produce a song. And they say, mashallah, this is very clever line, this one, just listen. Subhanallah, what clever line can a guy do who's been sleeping till 12 or 1 in the day because he was in the nightclub the night before. But shaitan told him, say this, and he said it. So he says, mashallah, very clever line, this one. Because why? It's in a rhythm or something. Extremely important also to be in a Muslim environment. Many people think that migrating to the West or to the non-Muslim countries, this is another factor, will be very good. Why? I spoke to them, many of them. They say, because my child will get very good education. If British, American, Australian education, what they're talking about, he will have so much money. They don't say it, they mean the good qualification. And a good qualification for what? To wipe the floor? For money. For the salary. But they don't think the damage it can do and will do, as Allah is telling us in the Quran, and the ulama kibar, big ulama, not small, who think themselves ulama, tell us to go and live in those countries. It's not correct. Whatever problems exist in Muslim countries, they are less than those countries. Believe me, I lived 40 years there. I can tell you. But even if I didn't live one day, we should believe what Allah says. And what the Prophet ﷺ says, when he says, their fires shouldn't be seen. They shouldn't be so close as to see each other's fire. لا تتراءى نارهما. And he used to take bay'ah, pledge of allegiance from the Sahaba, على مفارقة المشركين, to abandon the mushrikeen. And the Prophet ﷺ said, من جامع المشرك وسكن معه فإنه مثله. Whoever mixes with a mushrik and lives with him, he is like him. And unfortunately, these hadith either don't get repeated or they don't get understood. Because why? Because we want a qualification that is not from an Arab country. We think that this is better for us. It is not better for us. And even if we are forced, where do you find in those countries non-mixed education? Tell me. You're sending even I've seen girls get sent from Muslim countries alone to the West. Alone, 17 years of age. And we are 40, 50 years men, we are scared to go to the West. Because of the fitna and everything you find there. You sending 17-year-old kid alone. So we have to be responsible. Allah said in the Quran, describing the believers and those who look after masajid, that they don't fear anyone but Allah. We should be like that. We should try. If we make mistakes, we correct each other in a brotherly way. And we should also know, brothers and sisters, that all of us have different characters and personalities, just like Sahaba. Abu Bakr had one personality, Umar had another personality, Uthman a third personality, Ali a fourth personality, but all used to live together, used to be brothers, love one another for Allah. And that is what we must try and do. In order for us to bring up the youth in a good way and influence them and show them the example in ourselves. Because if we say one thing and do another, believe me, they will only look at what we do. And finally, I want to remind myself and you, if possible, to fast the day of Tasu'ah and Ashura, 9th and 10th, or 10th and 11th of Muharram. It is better if we can fast 9th and 10th to be different from the Jews. The Prophet ﷺ said, we have more right to fast the 10th of Muharram than you, addressing the Jews. And he said to the Sahaba, to be different from them, to fast one day before and the 10th, or the 10th and one day after. So that is what we should try and do, because it removes the sins of one whole year. And it's not correct for us to do bid'ah, innovations that many people do. and it's not correct for us to show Islam in a bad light, but we should do it because on this day Allah saved Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and his people from Fir'aun, and their story requires in itself a whole lecture which we don't have time for, but that is the significance of the day of Ashura. And it's not from the sunnah to distribute food and things like that on that day, specific food. Just to fast as usual and break your fast with the intention of pleasing Allah and following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And it's either to fast 9th and 10th or 10th and 11th of Muharram. May Allah enable us to follow His religion and follow His Prophet alayhi salat, and enable us not to fear anyone but Allah, because that's a great, as He said in the Quran, ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That is a great favor when you fear no one but Allah, when you're just slave of Allah, when you're not slave even of yourself. That is the greatest favor that Allah can give us in this dunya. May Allah enable us to be that, and may Allah enable us to have good brothers around us, and enable all of us to follow and preach Tawheed and Sunnah in the way of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and those who followed them, including the 4 Imams, and enable all of our brothers and sisters to be on the Sunnah and relieve the hardship of the Muslims everywhere by them returning to their religion and following their Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam correctly. Wa aqimus salam.